What is going on, you sexy individuals? Today we're going to be going over all of what you need to know about Plunderstorm, and without further ado, let's get straight into it here. So we're going to be going over, first of all, the UI settings. Alrighty, so the first thing that you're going to do here is you're going to press escape, you're going to click options, then you're going to go into interface here, and you're going to click on larger nameplates. This can help you see people from farther away. Then what you can do is you can go to your key bindings here and set those to kind of whatever you like right there. Next we have the plunder and the renown system. So as you do more and more matches and as you pick up plunder from the ground, getting it from mobs, getting it from chests, and doing your daily quests, you're going to talk to this gentleman here and he's going to tell you where you stand. Now as you go through more and more matches, you're going to get more and more renown, obviously, and the best way to get renown is by getting more plunder off the ground, even if you don't end up the number one and coming out on top. Alright, next here we're going to go over your levels. So you start out at level 1 obviously, and the max that I've seen somebody get to is level 10. Now as you progress through the levels, you actually get more health and you do more damage. So your auto attack does more damage, your spells do more damage, etc. Alrighty, now moving on to the meat and potatoes here, we have spells. So now you have offensive spells and you have defensive or utility spells, on top of having one item being able to be used from your inventory, which is a one-time use item. Now, these spells are pretty close, however, there are some very clear differences between like an S tier and a D tier. But before we move too much onto that, just want to clarify here, when you go around in the world and you find spells, you're going to find common, uncommon, rare, and then you're also going to find your epic. Now, if you do have, let's say, a fire whirl that is a regular, and you find another fire whirl, you can actually pick it up as well, and it upgrades your current fire whirl into an uncommon one. And as you go through the match, you can find more and more upgrades, and you can upgrade your uncommon all the way to an epic. Now do keep in mind that the rarity of the spell actually decreases the cooldown for it. So for example, a regular common fire whirl has an 18-second cooldown, and an epic fire whirl has a 12-second cooldown, which is a very big difference, especially as you get later on into the match. Alrighty, now moving on to the actual spells themselves. So we're going to start it out here with a tier list, and we're going to start S tier. So S tier, obviously you're going to have Fire Whirl, there's no contention for that. You have a 1-second cast timer on it, and it turns you into a flaming tornado, and it also makes your movement speed go fast, and that lasts for a few seconds, and you're dealing dot damage to anyone and everything around you. Next we have the Rim Arrow. So Rim Arrow fires an icy arrow at your current target. It cannot miss and has a super short cooldown. If you have an epic one, it is a 4-second cooldown with a 0.5-second cast time. You're shooting off a rim arrow every 3.5 seconds. This is not going to really be a main source of damage being dealt. However, it is going to be a really nice poke from afar. You know, just get some space from people who are using Fire Whirl or who are using the Searing Axe, and anything really like up close and personal, and you can just your distance and keep moving from afar. Alrighty, so now for the next tier here, we start out with Manosphere. So Manosphere has a 60-yard range. It is a channeled projectile. It has a 1.8-second cast time with a 14-second cooldown. It has a very long range. I think it has the longest range in the game, and essentially you're going to hold down, and you can either shoot it out really fast or you can hold it down for the full 1.8 seconds, and it'll make a very big, essentially a spirit bomb that travels along the ground. Now, word of note on Manosphere, it can be stopped from being channeled if somebody interrupts you mid being channeled, and you have to wait the entire cooldown again, which is not very nice for it. It does do a lot of damage, but it doesn't have any lock on features for it, so either make sure the person is really up close before they fully end up gap closing you, or you just have really good aim. Also, if there's anything on the ground in front of you, it will hit that, especially if there's like a little cliff or like a tree or something like that. But when it does hit, it does a lot of damage. Next up here, we have the Searing Axe. It has a 15-yard range, so it is a very short frontal melee conal ability. It has a 12-second cooldown, and you're going to be basically slamming down an axe and spewing some lava out in front of you, and it also knocks back enemies. So if someone is channeling, for example, Manosphere, and you do get up close and personal with them, you can actually stop them from from casting it. You can also stop somebody casting Fire Whirl and a bunch of other abilities such as that. It does also do a lot of damage. Alrighty, so next up in B tier, we actually have Slicing Winds. So Slicing Winds is a channeled forward lunge ability, and the more you hold it, the farther forward you lunge. It's a good little gap closer sometimes. It doesn't do too much damage. It has a relatively short cooldown at 12 seconds. However, it is a 1.4 second channeled cooldown, so it's not the most useful to get out of things. However, it could be something useful as a possibly secondary item to, let's say, Fire Whirl or Searing Axe. Alright, next up in B tier here, we have the Storm Archon. Storm Archon is a line AoE that has recast abilities. So you started out with the lightning, then you wait a second, and then you recast with the earth one, and then you recast again with the fire one. Now the only issue with this is that it doesn't do too much damage. It has a 20-second cooldown, and you do get 3 casts from it, however. So if you do miss the first one, you can make up with the second and the third charges as well. But all in all, it's not really great because it doesn't scale super well. So if you do get caught in the final circle with 3-4 people, you might be in trouble with that because you're going to be out for much longer than their cooldowns are going to be. Alrighty, so starting out with C tier here, we have Holy Shield. It is a 40-yard range with an 8-second cooldown, and it is a projectile that shoots in a straight line from wherever you're pointing it. It has a 1-second cast time, and it also has a recast action. So you're going to throw it out, and then when the shield gets to the point that you want, you can click it again, and then it's going to have a little AoE explosion from it as well. It doesn't do that much damage, and it does kind of leave you out for a little bit of time. So it's useful, but not super useful, and it doesn't do quite as much damage as the other ones. Alrighty, so next up here we have Earthbreaker. Earthbreaker is a 2-second channeled cast time AoE ability. It stuns everything in that area, and it deals a bit of damage, and it's on an 18-second cooldown. Now the reason that it's C tier is because most things can actually interrupt and stop it. So for example, if you have somebody mana sphering you, which is a 1.8 second channeled cast to the very max, it'll interrupt it. If somebody Searing Axes you, because it has a longer range, so it's good in theory for the stun. It's not really good in practicality, however. Alrighty, now moving on to D tier, which is essentially the F tier. We have, first of all, Star Bomb. So Star Bomb is a 40-yard range, 2.25 second cast. It is the longest cast time, and it has some of the longest cooldowns as well. It channels a big cosmic explosion, and you have to be inside of that explosion for it to do any damage. Now, it is great at clearing mobs, so if you get it early on in the game, it's a great way to get levels. However, it's not really good for PvP, actually. It has a long cast time, and it makes everyone slower, so that is good, but it also makes you slow, which is why it's in D tier. Alright, and the last one here on the list is the Toxic Smack Roll. This is a 0.5 second cast with a 7-second cooldown, frontal cone melee, and is the only poison or dot ability in the game here, and it's definitely the worst. It's unarguably the worst piece of trash that you can ever pick up. If you have any other option, get that option. Alrighty, so moving on to the defensive abilities here. Some of these are up for debate, but these are pretty much what they are right now in the meta, as we went over earlier, is the Fire Tornado. You don't want to get hit by that, so you want to do everything possible to get that away from you. Now, starting us out here with S tier is the Lightning Bulwark. So the Lightning Bulwark is one of the most slept on utility spells right now. It is a channeled 1.25 second cast, and the cooldown is 14 seconds. It negates all damage done to you for a few seconds, so 1.25 seconds. So if you see somebody coming at you with the Fiery Tornado, you can actually trigger this. And what it does is, not only do you get no damage from the Fiery Tornado, it also, receiving an attack, grants a movement bonus speed, and also removes any harmful debuff. So if you have a slow, it takes it off, and it also harms enemies near you as well. Next we have Repel. Repel is also quite slept on. It's an instant cast which channels essentially for 10 yards around you, and it makes you immune to all damage, and it also silences any ability that is in your area for 2 seconds, which is great. Now the downside to this is that it is a 22-second cooldown. Next here we have Fae Form. Fae Form is a caster buff where it breaks all CC and it gives you movement speed. You transform into a little blue animal and it gives you immunity to any debuff, increases your movement speed, and reduces damage for 4 seconds. It's on an 18-second cooldown. Next, we have Fate to Shadow. Fate to Shadow is an instant teleport stealth. So you are basically going to teleport somewhere where you're facing, and it's also going to stealth you for a few seconds. It's on an 18-second cooldown as well. That's pretty good to get out of certain things which you are stuck in. Next here we have Hunter's Chains. Hunter's Chains is really good, especially if you're rocking a melee build. So if you're using the axe and the fiery storm. Hunter's Chains is a 0.25 second cast with an 18-second cooldown, and it chains you to your target. And while you're chained, and if you recast it, you will get launched to their position. And if the chain target moves outside of the chain's range, they will be pulled to you. So that's also very, very good to keep them into melee range. Next here we have Quaking Step. Is a 2-part ability. It is a 0.5 second channeled cast with a 14-second cooldown. You basically leap up into the air into a big arc, and then you use it again, and then you crash down onto the surrounding area, and you will be doing damage and also stunning the enemy for 1 second. And it has a very short cooldown, so this is a very good one, especially if you're doing a melee build. I would definitely do Quaking Step and Hunter's Chains. Next here we have Windstorm. So Windstorm, I was debating, it's either an A or a C tier if you really think about it. It's a 14-second cooldown projectile, and it has a slight cast, and what you will do is, in front of the target caster, it shoots out a little tornado, and it will damage and stun the enemy for 2 seconds. It has a 60-yard range. However, if someone's on you, it's quite hard to channel, and it's also very hard to channel it when you have somebody right on your back. Next here we have Steel Trap. Steel Trap is an 18-second cooldown, and it shoots out traps all around you, and it will root the enemy for 2.5 seconds, and that's also decent when you're doing a melee. Next off here we have Snowdrift. Snowdrift is pretty good. It's not amazing. It is a 0.5 second cast with a 14-second cooldown, and it slows all the enemies around you, and it channels out like 3 or 4 times. The more you hit the same enemy with it, the slower that they are going to be. And lastly here we have the Explosive Caltrop. It's an instant 18-second cooldown backwards leap, and you can slow the enemy, and it does a little bit of damage when you're backing away from them, but you don't leap back really that far, and pretty much everything on the list is better. Alrighty, so now here we have the map of the area, and I'm going to just break down all of the different areas and how dangerous they are, how not dangerous, if you should go there, etc. Alrighty, so the red areas are these circles which are having a lot of players go in them, so a lot of high contention, or B, not having enough risk rewards. So for example, Stromguard and Hammerfall have a lot of contention in them, and it's very hard to get your spells. So if you're the first one to get a spell, you're going to generally have an upper hand on them, and people will leave you alone until they get a spell, so you can run around really fast and then get out. However, it's not really worth it. And then in the farms in the middle of the map there, it's a little bit more difficult because there aren't many spells there, and they're very far away from everything else. So if I want to get from Goshek Farm to Stormguard Keep, I'm going to travel a lot of distance, whereas if I'm at an outlier of Stormguard Keep, I have a lot of other little areas to get first dibs on. Now, the yellow is a moderate amount of contention. However, there isn't always a lot of people there. So sometimes you're going to be the only one there, sometimes 3 people are going to fly. It really depends on the day-to-day. Now, the greens, there have not been really any players there. I'll say maybe 1 out of every 10 times I've gone there. Has there really been anybody who has contested me for those resources? Now, with this map that I have marked up here, you're going to actually see the general flight patterns for the parrots. Those arrows that are coming in are generally the areas and the directions. Obviously, it'll change a little bit laterally or directionally, but those are generally the areas which people spawn in from. The people who are on the right generally want to go ahead and fly in fast to the mill or Hammerfall or the Witherbark village. However, Witherbark doesn't really have that many mobs that are compactly close together. Hammerfall does. This little island here on the top also has quite a few people. Really just play a few games, enjoy yourself, and really start kind of getting a feel for it. And that's basically what I got for you guys today. Thanks so much for sticking tuned and watching today. If you liked it, please go ahead, like, subscribe, etc. Thank you very much. Peace out for now.